Humanity had never been the center of attention in the galactic stage, but that was about to change. The Galactic Council, a collective of the universe's most powerful and advanced species, had decided to invite Earth to a prestigious event known as the Deathworld Summit. It was a gathering of the most dangerous civilizations, species that had learned to survive on planets where the very environment was a threat to life itself. For centuries, these alien races had ruled the cosmos, believing themselves to be the pinnacle of evolution. Humans, in their eyes, were nothing more than a primitive, aggressive species, barely scraping by on their comparatively quiet and safe homeworld. To the Council, Earth was just another minor planet, unworthy of serious attention. But the Council's invitation came nonetheless, and the humans were thrust into the limelight. Captain Alara Knox, a woman of sharp intellect and boundless determination, was tasked with leading a small delegation of ambassadors to the summit. Alongside her, a team of the best minds and warriors from Earth would represent their planet. As the humans arrived, they were met with a cool reception, perhaps colder than they had expected. The aliens eyed them with a mix of disdain and amusement, whispering amongst themselves about how easily the humans would crumble under the weight of the summit's harsh trials. Some of the species openly mocked humanity, calling them weaklings unfit to even survive on the same level as them. The humans, however, stood tall, their faces betraying no fear as they prepared to face whatever awaited them. The summit was held on a massive artificial station built in orbit around a dying star. The station was a neutral ground, a symbol of the Galactic Council's influence and power. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Alien delegates from planets with environments harsher than any human could imagine whispered about their dangerous homeworlds, places where every day was a battle to survive. The humans were expected to be nothing more than spectacle, a curiosity, to be observed, and perhaps even a subject of ridicule. The first challenge, they were told, would be a test of survival. Each species would be placed on a dangerous world, a planet designed to kill anything unprepared for its brutality. The aliens believed that humans, with their fragile biology, would fail before they even started. Alara's team, however, had prepared in a way no one else had anticipated. They were not here to be humbled or to suffer the same fate that so many others expected for them. Humans had survived countless hardships on Earth, from natural disasters to wars, from disease to starvation. The human spirit was far stronger than the aliens had given it credit for, and Alara knew that. As the time for the first test drew near, she gathered her team in a small briefing room, a look of steely determination on her face. "We've been underestimated from the start," she said, her voice firm. "But this is where we show them that we don't break. We adapt, we fight, and we survive. This is our chance to prove that we're not here to be their entertainment. We're here to stand as equals." The team nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. They knew what was at stake, not just their own lives, but the future of Earth. This was their moment to show the galaxy that humans were not just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the summit's trials began, the humans were escorted to a simulation chamber where they were told they would be sent to a death world, an environment so hostile that even the most resilient species struggled to survive. The planet was a barren wasteland, its surface constantly bombarded by violent storms, earthquakes, and extreme temperatures. But the humans weren't afraid. They had prepared for this. With their advanced technology, teamwork, and sheer determination, they quickly set to work, using every tool at their disposal to make the harsh world their ally, not their enemy. They built shelters, set up automated systems to collect resources, and devised strategies to navigate the deadly terrain. The other species watched from the safety of the observation decks, some of them laughing, others just shaking their heads in disbelief. As the hours passed, something unexpected began to happen. The humans didn't just survive, they thrived. They used their ingenuity and resourcefulness to turn the Deathworld's challenges into opportunities. The aliens, once sure of their victory, now found themselves wondering, could these humans truly be capable of surviving in the most hostile environment in the galaxy? The tension in the air was palpable, and the humans, despite the odds stacked against them, were proving one thing: their survival instinct was unmatched. They were no longer the underdogs in this fight. The summit had begun, and the galaxy was watching. It was only a matter of time before the aliens realized that humanity's place in the universe was not as insignificant as they had once believed. The summit's opening ceremony was an event that sent a shiver through the gathered crowd. It began with an ancient tradition, the Arena of Worlds, a deadly competition that tested the limits of endurance, survival, and intelligence. Each species had to face a simulated planet, a world designed to challenge even the most advanced civilizations. These worlds were no ordinary simulations. They were created to push their participants to the brink of destruction, testing every skill and every instinct. The creatures that inhabited these planets were not just hostile. They were designed to be unbeatable, forces of nature so extreme that only the most resilient could survive. And today, it was humanity's turn. The humans, once seen as nothing more than an afterthought, now stood before the vast arena, ready to face a trial like no other. As the simulation began, they were thrust onto a barren, hostile planet. The sky above was a sickly hue, dark clouds swirling with violent energy. Winds howled across the desolate surface, sending dust storms that cut like knives through the air. It was a planet where survival was a luxury. Every step could be your last. The ground beneath them was cracked and uneven, filled with jagged rocks and dangerous fissures. To make matters worse, the planet was alive in ways that most of the aliens couldn't even begin to understand. The fauna of this world were not simple predators. They were apex killers, each creature more lethal than the next. The other species, watching from the observation decks, were sure of one thing. They expected the humans to fail. They watched with smug confidence, convinced that the so-called primitive species would be crushed by the very environment itself. It was a spectacle to them, a way to further remind the humans of their place. To the aliens, humanity's survival was a joke, something so improbable that it barely registered on their scales of expectation. But what they didn't know was that humans were far more than they appeared. Captain Alara Knox, a woman of remarkable skill and intelligence, wasn't just here to participate. She was here to lead. As soon as the simulation began, she wasted no time assessing the situation. Her eyes scanned the barren landscape, quickly calculating her team's next steps. The harsh winds and swirling dust made communication difficult, but the humans had trained for this. They worked together in near silence, using their collective knowledge to quickly adapt. They began building shelters, setting up systems to collect water from the dry atmosphere, and even using the surrounding terrain to create traps for the deadly wildlife. While other species might have relied on brute force or sheer power, the humans relied on their greatest strength: ingenuity. The predators on this planet were terrifying. Some creatures were massive, towering over the humans, their scales like armor and their eyes glowing with hunger. Others were smaller but no less dangerous, moving with lightning speed and vicious precision. But rather than panic, the humans responded with calm efficiency. They didn't fight everything in sight. Instead, they used their environment to their advantage. With every challenge the planet threw at them, the humans adapted. They constructed makeshift weapons from the natural resources they could find, using them not just to defend themselves, but to outsmart their attackers. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Captain Knox's team began to show signs of brilliance. They figured out how to manipulate the planet's extreme weather to their advantage, using the powerful winds to propel makeshift sails across the planet's rugged surface. They lured the predators into traps, using their intelligence and teamwork to set up ambushes. As the other species watched from their high vantage points, the smug smiles faded. The humans were doing more than surviving. They were mastering this Deathworld, turning every challenge into a victory. It was something no one had expected. The aliens couldn't hide their shock. They had watched countless species try and fail in the arena of worlds, yet the humans were somehow doing the impossible. Where others had failed, the humans were showing resourcefulness and tenacity like no other. Their adaptability was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. As the hours turned into days, the human team continued to grow stronger, more cohesive, and more determined. By the time the simulation ended, it was clear to everyone watching that the humans had not only survived, they had conquered the planet in a way no one thought possible. The room fell silent. The other species, once so confident in their superiority, were now left speechless. Humanity had done the impossible, and for the first time, the galaxy began to understand. These so-called primitive humans were anything but. They had shown the universe that, in the harshest of environments, they could not only survive, they could thrive. And that was just the beginning. The humans' unexpected success in the arena of worlds had sent shockwaves through the summit. What was meant to be a spectacle of their failure had turned into a display of human ingenuity and survival. The other species, once so confident in their superiority, were now rethinking their assumptions about humanity. But not all were willing to admit defeat so easily. Some of the more hostile and prideful species felt humiliated by the humans' victory, and their anger simmered beneath the surface. Among them was the Varn, a brutal insectoid race known for their cunning tactics and ruthless nature. The Varn were not the kind to back down quietly, and the humans' triumph had become a thorn in their side. In the shadows of the summit, a plan was set in motion, a covert operation to eliminate the humans before they could disrupt the delicate balance of power. The Varn, with their intelligence and ruthless efficiency, believed they could strike quickly and silently. They knew that the human delegation, despite their victory in the arena, would not be prepared for an attack inside the summit itself. The Varn sent their best assassins, deadly creatures trained to infiltrate and kill without being detected. Their plan was simple: sabotage the humans' mission, assassinate Captain Alara Knox and her team, and send a clear message to the rest of the summit. Humans were not welcome in the galactic order. They slipped through the corridors of the summit station under the cover of darkness, their presence unnoticed by the unsuspecting delegates. However, the Varn had underestimated the humans in ways they couldn't have imagined. Captain Knox and her team, having faced countless threats back on Earth, were not so easily caught off guard. The humans' military training and their natural instincts for sensing danger were their greatest assets. They had learned to stay alert in hostile environments, trusting their senses and intuition in ways that many of the alien species simply could not understand. It was this sixth sense that saved them. As the assassins moved closer to their targets, something felt off. A flicker in the shadows, a subtle shift in the air, a sound too faint to be ignored. Captain Knox's instincts kicked in, and she turned to her team. Without saying a word, they moved into position, alert and ready for anything. The Varn struck first, launching a surprise attack in the dimly lit hallway of the summit's inner chambers. But the humans were ready. A brutal, high-stakes confrontation unfolded in the narrow corridors of the station. The Varn were swift and deadly, their razor-sharp claws and advanced weaponry cutting through the air with terrifying precision. Yet the humans were faster, their minds sharper, their resolve unyielding. Captain Knox and her team used their knowledge of the summit's layout to their advantage, leading the Varn into narrow spaces where their larger bodies couldn't maneuver effectively. They fought back with a combination of advanced technology and raw human determination. Knox's team deployed high-tech gadgets to disorient the assassins, blinding lights, electromagnetic pulses, and traps set to disable their enemies. Every move was calculated, every action a response to the attacker's strategies. What the Varn had failed to account for was the human ability to adapt under pressure, to think quickly and decisively even in the most dangerous of situations. The fight reached a boiling point as the humans managed to corner the remaining Varn assassins. With precise coordination, they neutralized the threat, using their advanced weaponry and hand-to-hand combat skills. The Varn, stunned and enraged, had no choice but to retreat, their mission a complete failure. The humans had not only survived, they had decisively defeated their would-be killers. The message was clear: humans were not to be underestimated. Their resolve, their intelligence, and their willpower were forces that no assassin, no matter how skilled, could overcome. The news of the attack and its failure spread quickly through the summit, and the mood among the other species began to shift. The once mocking whispers turned into murmurs of respect. The Varn, now humiliated and defeated, were forced to withdraw into the shadows, their reputation forever tarnished. Meanwhile, the humans stood tall, not just as survivors, but as powerful players on the galactic stage. They had proven that, despite their seemingly humble beginnings, they were a force to be reckoned with. The rest of the galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity was not just resilient, they were unstoppable. The game had changed, and the summit would never be the same. As the summit continued, a new sense of unease began to settle over the delegates. The atmosphere, once filled with pride and posturing, shifted into one of tension and suspicion. The focus was no longer on the human delegation's shocking survival or their defiance against the Varn. It was on something far more dangerous, far more deadly. The aliens began whispering of a presence that none had expected, a shadow that loomed over the galaxy, growing darker by the day. There was something far worse than internal politics at play, and it had nothing to do with human pride or alien rivalries. The delegates had heard rumors, strange reports of entire colonies falling silent, vanishing without a trace, but it was only when the first official transmission came through that the full horror of the situation was revealed. The Zinthor, an ancient galactic predator, had awoken. Little was known about the creature, but the tales surrounding it were enough to chill the blood of even the most battle-hardened warriors. The Zinthor was a being of unimaginable power, a ruthless entity that fed on entire civilizations. No one knew its origin or its true form, but its actions were undeniable. It struck without warning, sweeping through star systems with terrifying speed, decimating entire colonies, leaving nothing but lifeless planets in its wake. As it moved, it consumed everything in its path: resources, technology, and lives. The summit, a gathering of the galaxy's most advanced and powerful species, was thrown into chaos. The delicate balance of power that had been established in the galaxy now seemed fragile, and the delegates, once so sure of their own survival, were now scrambling for answers. The Zinthor's attacks were swift and devastating, leaving entire fleets destroyed and planets reduced to rubble. The outer colonies that had been the first to fall were now completely cut off, their communications severed, their fates unknown. The creatures that had once been the pinnacle of evolution now found themselves united by a common fear. As the reality of the threat set in, the summit grew more frantic. Alliances were quickly forged, and panic spread like wildfire. But there was no clear way to stop the Zinthor. No one knew how to fight a creature that could erase entire civilizations with ease, and that's when the unexpected happened. The humans, those who had been treated with disdain just days ago, became the center of attention once again. The other species turned to Captain Alara Nox and her team, recognizing something that the rest of the galaxy had overlooked until now. Humanity had survived countless threats on Earth: natural disasters, invasions, pandemics, and wars. Humans had lived through it all and emerged stronger each time. What the other species had failed to realize was that humans had a unique ability to adapt, to survive, and to fight when everything seemed lost. Despite being the newest species at the summit, the humans were the only ones who seemed to have any hope of standing against the Zinthor. Captain Knox stood before the assembly, her mind racing. This was no longer about diplomacy or proving humanity's place in the galaxy. This was about survival. She looked around the room, at the faces of species who had once doubted her and her people. There was no time for pride or politics now. The galaxy was in danger, and it was up to her team to take action. "This is no longer a diplomatic issue," Knox said, her voice steady but resolute. "The Zinthor doesn't care about your alliances or your power. It cares only for destruction. We've faced extinction before, and we've always come through. It's time we do the same for the galaxy." Her words echoed through the room, and for the first time, the other delegates saw humanity not as a nuisance or a curiosity, but as a potential savior. With urgency in her voice, Knox immediately began assembling a task force, an elite team of humans, alongside select representatives from the most trusted species at the summit. The mission was simple: track down the Zinthor, confront it, and eliminate it before it wiped out everything they had worked so hard to build. The humans, with their mix of military expertise, ingenuity, and unwavering will, became the backbone of the operation. Knox's team set to work immediately, gathering intelligence, preparing their weapons, and forming strategies that would give them the best chance of survival against a creature unlike any other. The odds were stacked against them, but humanity had never been one to back down from a challenge. This time, the galaxy would see just what humans were capable of, and the Zinthor would learn, too, that even the most terrifying predator could meet its match in those who refused to be hunted. As Captain Knox prepared to take her team into the unknown, she couldn't help but feel the weight of what was at stake. The summit had already been changed by humanity's presence, but now, humanity might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and total annihilation. The alien species at the summit were desperate. In the face of the Zinthor's unimaginable power, most of them opted for brute force, hoping that their advanced technology and sheer might could overcome the predator. Their fleets mobilized, their weapons powered up, and every warship they could muster was prepared to face the Zinthor head-on. Yet, despite their overwhelming resources, the aliens were beginning to realize that brute force was not the answer. The Zinthor was no ordinary beast. It was a creature that thrived on chaos, using its ability to strike without warning to devastate entire civilizations. The more they tried to fight back, the more they realized that no amount of firepower would work against an entity that had conquered so many worlds before. The Zinthor's intelligence and adaptability were as dangerous as its raw power, and the aliens were failing to recognize the true nature of the threat. In contrast, the humans, once dismissed as nothing more than a primitive species, approached the situation with a different mindset. While others rushed to face the Zinthor with weapons raised, Captain Knox and her team spent their time analyzing the creature's patterns, its behaviors, and the environment it thrived in. They didn't focus on matching the Zinthor's might. They focused on understanding its weaknesses. And that understanding led them to a radical plan, one that would take advantage of the predator's instincts rather than trying to overpower it. Captain. Knox knew that the Zinthor wasn't simply a mindless killer. It was a creature that operated based on environmental cues, a predator that hunted using its surroundings to guide its attacks. This was where the humans saw an opportunity. Instead of chasing the Zinthor into a battle it was sure to win, they decided to use the creature's own behavior against it. The humans' deep knowledge of Earth's ecosystems, where they had studied and understood the delicate balance of predator and prey, gave them the insight they needed. They realized that if they could mimic the right conditions, if they could set the perfect trap, then they could force the Zinthor into a vulnerable position. The plan was simple, yet brilliant. They would lure the Zinthor into a trap by using remote moons, isolated and barely inhabited, as bait. These moons, with their stark landscapes and harsh conditions, would provide the perfect environment for the Zinthor to sense its prey. The humans would manipulate the moon's natural features, creating conditions that would attract the predator. They began to set up bait systems, artificial signals that mimicked the type of life force the Zinthor thrived on. The moons would act as beacons, drawing the creature in, unaware that it was walking straight into a trap. Captain Knox and her team, working tirelessly in the background, ensured that everything was set in motion. They used their advanced technology, not to fight the Zinthor directly, but to monitor its every move, ensuring that the predator would follow the bait without suspecting anything. It was a calculated risk, relying on the Zinthor's predictable behavior to do the work for them. As the humans prepared to spring their trap, it was clear that they were not relying on superior firepower or massive armies. Instead, they were betting on their greatest strength, strategic thinking, and adaptability. When the moment came, the trap was set, and the Zinthor took the bait. It arrived on one of the moons, drawn by the signals the humans had carefully placed. But what the predator didn't know was that the humans were ready. Using their superior intelligence and carefully planned coordination, they trapped the Zinthor in a field of energy disruptors, preventing it from escaping and cutting off its ability to continue its rampage across the galaxy. The other species watched in disbelief as the humans, with their seemingly simple plan, managed to corner the Zinthor without ever needing to directly engage it in a battle of strength. The Zinthor, a creature that had devastated entire colonies, now found itself trapped and powerless. The humans had shown the galaxy something the others hadn't anticipated. They didn't need overwhelming firepower to win. They needed something far more dangerous. They needed the ability to think, to adapt, and to outsmart their enemies at every turn. The Zinthor, a predator who had once been thought invincible, had been outwitted by humanity's brilliance. It was a victory, not of force, but of intellect, a demonstration of the unique strength that humans brought to the table. And as the Zinthor was contained, the summit delegates began to realize something they hadn't before. Humanity, with its resilience, ingenuity, and tactical brilliance, was not just a force to be reckoned with. It was a force that could change the very course of the galaxy. The humans had finally brought the Zinthor to its knees, but the real test was just beginning. The creature, trapped on a desolate world far from the summit, was more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. Despite being caught in the humans' elaborate trap, the Zinthor had not given up. It was an ancient being, more powerful than any creature the galaxy had ever known. Able to manipulate gravity, energy, and even the fabric of space-time itself, it was a force that seemed unstoppable. The trap had only slowed it down, not stopped it. Now, on the barren world where the final battle would take place, the Zinthor was ready to fight back with everything it had. Its power rippled through the air, distorting the landscape as it prepared for its final stand. Captain Alara Knox and her team stood on the precipice of what seemed like certain death, but they were not deterred. This battle was humanity's last chance to prove their place in the galaxy, not just as survivors, but as warriors who could rise to meet the impossible. The humans knew they were outmatched in raw power, but they had one advantage that none of the other species could match: their will to survive. With every fiber of their being, they fought not just to defeat the Zinthor, but to save everything they held dear. They understood that this was more than just a battle for their lives. It was a battle for the entire galaxy. The battle began with the Zinthor's massive presence warping the space around it, creating gravity wells that threatened to crush anything in its path. It twisted the fabric of reality itself, sending shockwaves of energy through the battlefield. But the humans, ever resourceful, didn't fight directly against the creature's overwhelming might. Instead, they relied on their knowledge, their technology, and their ability to adapt. They used the very environment to their advantage, setting up energy disruptors that weaken the Zinthor's control over gravity and energy. The battlefields shifted between planes of existence as the humans utilized guerrilla tactics, slipping in and out of the Zinthor's range, using the terrain to hide and regroup. The Zinthor was relentless, its strength and intellect formidable, but it was not infallible. The creature's reliance on manipulating the environment gave the humans a glimpse of a weakness. Every time it used its powers, it created a brief vulnerability, a moment of instability where the very fabric of reality around it began to tear. It was in these moments of chaos that the humans struck. Captain Knox, with her sharp tactical mind, coordinated every move with precision, directing her team through the swirling chaos. They used the creature's own abilities against it, drawing it into positions where its powers would backfire. Zinthor's gravity manipulation was its greatest asset, but the humans had anticipated this. They lured the creature to a location where the planet's natural magnetic field could be used to destabilize its abilities. It was a risky maneuver, one that relied on timing, perfect coordination, and the bravery of every human on the field. As the Zinthor unleashed a devastating energy pulse, the humans triggered a series of magnetic pulses that disrupted the creature's control. For the first time in the battle, the Zinthor was forced to struggle against its own powers, but the creature would not give up easily. It roared in fury, reshaping the environment to its will. Mountains crumbled, the ground trembled, and the air crackled with raw energy. The humans were being pushed to their limits, their equipment strained, their bodies exhausted. But they refused to break. Captain Knox's voice crackled over the comms, steady and determined. "This is it. We end it now." It was a call to action, a reminder of why they had come this far. With one final coordinated strike, the humans launched their most dangerous weapon, a device that would overload the Zinthor's ability to manipulate space-time. The device, designed by Earth's best minds, was their last shot at victory. As they activated it, the Zinthor attempted to stop them, but it was too late. The energy of the device surged through the battlefield, creating a shockwave that destabilized the creature's powers entirely. In that instant, the Zinthor was left vulnerable, unable to control the very forces it had once commanded so easily. The humans seized the moment. With a combined effort, they brought the creature down, using their remaining strength to incapacitate it once and for all. The battle was won, not through sheer force, but through humanity's indomitable will, strategic thinking, and unwavering determination. The Zinthor, the galaxy's most fearsome predator, was defeated. The survivors, battered and exhausted, stood victorious on the desolate world. The galaxy, once again, was safe. As Captain Knox looked out over the battlefield, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Humanity had not just survived this death world, they had triumphed. They had proven that they were more than just a species that had overcome one disaster after another. They had proven that, even against impossible odds, humanity would rise and fight, not just for survival, but for victory. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. The summit came to an end in a heavy, stunned silence. The grand hall, once buzzing with the sounds of arrogant debates and whispered mockery, was now eerily quiet. The aliens, who had once looked down upon humanity as a weak and primitive species, now regarded the humans with a mixture of awe, respect, and disbelief. The final battle against the Zinthor had changed everything. Where once humanity had been treated as an insignificant presence in the galaxy, now they were seen as the saviors of countless species and civilizations. The other races, once dismissive and even hostile, now extended hands of peace and cooperation, recognizing the humans not only as survivors, but as equals, capable of rising to unimaginable challenges and prevailing. Earth, once considered a backwater planet in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, was now a cornerstone of galactic politics, a key player in the future of the universe. Captain Alara Knox and her team were hailed as heroes. not just for their victory over the Zinthor, but for embodying everything that humanity represented. They were the face of a species that had refused to die, that had stood against extinction time and again, and always emerged stronger. The humans' victory was not won through the might of weapons or armies, but through their ingenuity, resilience, and the courage to face impossible odds. As Nox stood before the assembly, receiving the accolades of species that had once mocked her, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. It wasn't just her team that had triumphed. It was all of humanity, every person who had fought to survive against overwhelming odds. Their victory had brought something far more valuable than a military alliance. It had brought respect. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's true potential, and it had forever changed their place in the universe. The Deathworlders, the once proud species that had believed themselves the pinnacle of evolution, now stood in quiet reflection. They had long believed that survival in the harshest of environments was the ultimate testament to strength. They had once seen humanity's ability to survive on Earth, a planet filled with dangers and predators, as a curiosity, but now they realized something far more profound. The true measure of strength wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. It was the ability to adapt, to learn, and to push forward when faced with destruction. The humans had demonstrated that in ways no one could have predicted. The apex predator of the cosmos, once thought to be a title reserved for those with the most terrifying of abilities, now had a new contender: humanity. As the summit concluded, Captain Nox took a moment to look around the room. The galaxy's most powerful species, the ones who had once considered themselves untouchable, were now united in their newfound respect for Earth's people. They had all witnessed something extraordinary, and though no words were spoken, it was clear to everyone in the room that the universe would never be the same. The humans had proven that strength didn't come from size, power, or raw aggression. It came from the heart, the mind, and an unwavering will to survive. The galaxy had learned that there was no force greater than the spirit of humanity. In the weeks that followed, Earth was no longer just a planet in the distant reaches of the galaxy. It was a respected world, a center for cooperation, and a beacon of hope for all those who had once felt powerless against the darkness of the cosmos. The humans, under Captain Nox's leadership, helped broker peace between warring species and became central figures in a new era of galactic diplomacy. They had proven that humanity was more than just a species struggling to survive. They were a species capable of thriving in the face of any challenge, capable of leading the galaxy into a new age. And so, the legacy of humanity was sealed. It was no longer a story of survival alone. It was a story of triumph. The humans had come to the Deathworld Summit as outsiders, underestimated and ridiculed. They left it as heroes, not just of their own world, but of the entire galaxy. As the galaxies turned and civilizations moved forward, one truth remained clear. The Deathworlders might have been the pride of the galaxy once, but now, the humans were the new apex predators, undaunted, unyielding, and unstoppable.